truly is amazing. I breathe and live what I'm doing. And I think it's the greatest job so far, of my career.
Hello, and welcome to View from the Hill, the podcast that speaks with leaders in the public sector from a recruiter's point of view. Joining me today for our very first episode is Executive Director of Children's Services at the London Borough of Wandsworth, and one of the first people that I met in my career as a recruiter at Tower Hill, Ana Popovici. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Or shall I say, I'm delighted to welcome you at
Yes, please go on.
Groove, which is absolutely at the heartbeat of Wandsworth Council, a place where I'm proud to be serving as of this year.
Yeah, can you tell us a bit more about this? Where are we right now? Can you tell us a bit about Falcon Groove and what it sort of represents in the borough, and well, maybe just this place as well?
Well, my pleasure. Falcon Groove is a place where we hope that young people will find inspiration in the world of art and music, a place away from home where everyone can feel safe, held, and work on their aspirations and skills. And we are within probably 5 minutes walk from Clapham Junction.
Yeah.
Generally at the heartbeat of Wandsworth.
I love that. It's a very nice area, and it makes a lot of sense for why it's what did you mention earlier, the London Borough of Culture for 2023?
Yes, we are all excited to be thinking about the big wow year next year. Proud to have won the London Borough of Culture. So there's a lot of energy and momentum going on, and thinking about the big wow events that we've got on the horizon.
Good. Well, I look forward to seeing that. Let's get to, today, and it's a conversation with you. I want to get to know a bit about your journey before we go on to sector stuff and whatever. So could we take it back to the beginning? Could you run us through your early years and how it led to the start of your career?
Right. Back to my early years. I'm a communist kid.
Yeah.
I grew up in communist Romania. Totally blessed with a wonderful family. I'm one of two, the older sister. I'm mentioning that because I think that is important when you think about being the older one and the expectations that perhaps the family have of the older ones. So it's a bit of a, leadership conversation from the early years. A lot of conversation around caring for others, looking after others, being protective, complexities around navigating dynamics in the family. So all comes into play. So I was born and brought up and went to school and trained in Romania.
Okay.
I feel privileged to talk about my early life and early years because they were truly blessed and full of love, and at times tough love with expectations of achieving. At the time, we hardly had anything because those were the days in Romania. On the face of it, everyone was equal. My parents, both teachers, working for local government, they always inspired us to think big, to dare, to dream, and encourage us to really embrace the tool for lives. And the tools that they were talking about, which I now, looking back, understand a bit more, were predominantly the education conversations. So they always felt that if you work hard and learn, you stand a better chance. Of course, there's other things that come into
course, yeah.
But they always instilled in us, both me and my sister, that discipline about, doing the homework, working hard, be the best you can be, at school. So, that was how it all started. So in many ways, because of what they did and being public servants, and seeing how they dedicated their lives and careers to the benefit of the communities and the children and families they serve as teachers. In many ways, it instilled in me that more or less duty of thinking about the others and thinking about communities in that kind of way. My dad later on became a local councillor, politician. And funny enough, he had oversight of the different kind of arrangements in local politics then in Romania, but he oversaw the workings of the culture, education, and social work. So in many ways, he was always around me.
It sounds like the type of background which I would think that someone who's in your current position would have. How did that start happen then? Obviously, you've had your parents who are a big inspiration and kind of led by example from what you're saying. How was the first step to doing something yourself after maybe all the education and stuff?
Well, in
was it?
many ways, there was a few things that were non-negotiable. So the non-negotiable was, in many ways, an expectation from my dad to think carefully about the career choice. Both of us girls more or less ended up in teaching. So as a primary school teacher first, so I trained to do that. I grew up with that around me, so it felt in many ways natural, but it wasn't necessarily my career of choice. So no surprise that I decided to switch.
Okay.
And I chose social work.
Sure. So how long did you teach for, and then what made you make that change, and how did you find it?
So I actually only practiced for 1 year.
Okay.
And then went to do social work, my social work degree, and then I didn't really look back. Of course, when you work with children and families, you holistically think about their needs and obviously education and outcomes, and back to the tools for life conversation. Teaching has always been part of the conversation, but I focused more on empowering young people and families to be the best that they could be. And interesting enough, looking back, both professions are actually cross-cutting all boundaries, not just in the Romanian society, but actually globally. So again, did I choose well? I think I did, in terms of
Let's say so.
something that is it can unify globally everyone, whether you're talking about teaching or social work. It's the same conversation as climate change, but can have this conversation. So
there's a
me wow.
There's certainly like a consensus of its importance, and I've been lucky to sort of understand it at a more granular level in the role that I'm in. So to go on to continuing your journey, could you tell me a bit about how and when you made the move from Romania to the UK? What was the experience like, and how did it sort of shape you as a person?
So growing up in communist Romania, on the face of it, everyone was equal. But that was the rule. However, the system was completely dysfunctional, and I remember going to school, and a lot of, particularly boys from a nearby orphanage, were part of my journey into education, and seeing the disadvantage, the poverty, in many ways, the lack of ambition for them, that the states just in many ways ignore them. I always felt that I wanted to do something about that injustice, and there's something about me which from early days to now, I don't do patience very well. So I came to graduate from university, and I've learned a lot about social work in the perfect UK system. So I was attracted by, in many ways, my ambition to learn more about the perfect system. But at that time, I thought I will come, I'll learn from the best, and I go back and make a difference. Things didn't work quite like that. And so I came over just 20 years ago. I got a job as a social worker in Skegness in Lancashire. I was probably one of the first overseas recruits for Lincolnshire. And ever since, I felt like UK could be, and now is my home.
Yeah.
So 20 years on, I genuinely feel I'm a product of the local government, in many ways, the talent management, pool. Throughout my journey from being a social worker in Skegness to then, I worked in Lincolnshire for a number of years in various roles before I moved into a national role and then, came to London.
Yeah.
I had great people around me, great mentors and allies that always pushed me and always inspired me to think big and to chase my next dream and my next step. So I've got a lot to give back in many ways to the local government family, because they have absolutely been part of my journey, part of my becoming.
Awesome. You've taken us through the journey from starting off in Romania, coming to the UK into Lincolnshire. Could you continue on then? Where did the journey go from there to where you are now?
Yeah, let me talk you through that. It's been an interesting journey, and actually very rarely I pause and think back. I've done a course recently, and we've been asked to look at our journey to now. So if I can focus on that for a second. And what was interesting about the way in which I looked at my journey is my journey is best described around the people and the places that really influenced me and my thinking about the next steps and where I want to be. I've always been passionate about doing things that bring together people, places, in places with a purpose.
Yeah.
So Lincolnshire, a number of years, they've looked after me. They have been my first professional home, and I'll let you into a secret. Every time I get a promotion or I feel I've achieved something, I actually go back to
Really?
on a pilgrimage just to say, it might sound crazy, to say
Not at all. I love that.
to say thank you to the people that first believed in me.
Yeah.
Because I was newly qualified, coming from overseas, and I do remember, people that will say to me, just read this, what do you think about that? They really invested in me. They really wanted me to become the best I could be. I then moved on into a national role. People follow people. I followed one of my leaders into a national role. I worked for Kafkas for a number of years, and I've led many operational areas at a time where things were not easy in the organization. I've learned a lot. The exposure to local authorities that we were coming in contact with, the partners, the communities, the families, the judges. I think with the benefit of hindsight, those 7 years in a national role and the exposure to the people and the places and the various agendas nationally and locally, they really formed me as a leader in a place, but leader, in the balcony looking across the sector, and I'm a lot to thank them for. Following Kafkas, I really wanted to come back to a place, so I made my way to London, to Hillingdon, and Hillingdon's been great. I might make it sound very easy and everything is great with the benefit of hindsight. There's always been things in the way that were challenging at times, but every single place and every single role I had really helped shape who I am, and that in turn helped me be a better leader of people, of places. And I genuinely believe that every single person that had a conversation with me on my journey had something to do with who I am now.
Right.
I think this takes me back to my childhood when we didn't have not iPhones, but mobile phones and technology, and you had to really rely on that power of conversation and relationships. And if you fell out with a friend, you had to make your way next day to have a conversation. And I always felt from early years to now that my network is really my net worth. And I do invest in people, and I think as a result of that, I get a lot out of it.
Yeah. Okay, so we're on Wandsworth. You're the DCS at Wandsworth, of course. Could you tell me a bit about what that role entails and maybe some ups and downs?
Right. It really is a privilege to be serving as a DCS in Wandsworth. And what's not to love about it?
Building.
I love the place. We are in Wandsworth, inner city, borough, in the greatest capital of the world. So that in itself, oh my God, sometimes I have to pinch myself to really believe that I'm actually entrusted, to do this role. It's all about the people, the people that I work with, the people we are here to serve. It truly is amazing. I breathe and live what I'm doing. And I think it's the greatest job so far, of my career.
Well,
I wake up every morning and I really count my blessings. I really do count my blessing. I've got amazing people around me, because I do believe everything done well is done through work. So I do believe in that. And I'm truly blessed, with an amazing team, whether you're looking at my partners, the school communities, the politicians that really champion, the work of children's services. Not for 1 second I feel that I'm alone, and even when the going gets tough and hard, because it does get sometimes, I've got a lot of people. So at place level, you really do feel that I'm a corporate director. And in the same way it takes a village to raise a child, I feel that Children's Services Department is absolutely held and looked after by the wider corporate team. Together we are corporate parents, for our most vulnerable children in the community, and aspirational for them and all. So it truly is fantastic at regional level, being part of a region, London as a region. It's phenomenal. We work together. We learn from each other. We support each other. No one is ever alone, whatever the ask and the task. Even nationally, as an association of directors, we are quite a powerful crowd. And again, we share ideas together. We work on issues together. So from every angle you look at, the role is phenomenal. It's strategic enough to drive change, policy change, to influence a place, and big nationally. So you can be in the balcony one moment, but you're close enough, because you're in local government, you're close enough and on the dance floor to put your arms around whoever, from children, young people you work with to partners. And it really feels like you're part of a local family. and that cares for the people we're here to serve. And when things align like they are and have in Wandsworth, all the way from political landscape, to the corporate center, to a fantastic team. And oh my God, my workforce, my biggest asset. What's not to love about that? I mean, it truly is phenomenal. And seeing how everything we do and every conversation we have transforms lives and gives people hope, especially when you're on that forever journey from despair to hope to wanting the best possible chances for everyone. It truly is a privilege.
You mentioned together, team, family, and general like a theme of community. And do you reckon that plays a big influence in your management style? The way you sort of lead now that you are in the position you are in?
I think so. I would like and I would hope that people would describe me as such. I am relational. I make time for people. I value. I feel I learn from every conversation. I see the best in people, and I think that's important because as a society, I'm not sure that's a conversation that's really truly privileged. But I believe in that. Maybe I know I mentioned this on a few occasions, going back to how I've learned to engage and form friendships. Back in my childhood, that was the foundation, and seeing how that's playing a part in everything I do, professionally and personally. I would like to think that is me, compassionate and kind to people, with people. And I can also be bold, brave, and decisive. I'm here to and entrusted to do a job, and with that, sometimes there's asks and tasks that might not make me popular. But as long as you take people on the journey and you treat them with respect and listen with intent and purpose, I think that's important, and it's, again, transformational.
Amazing. I probably should have mentioned this earlier for those listeners who don't know who we are. So Tar Hill are providers of interim and permanent recruitment solutions for local authorities. And my next question is, something that probably a lot of our community could benefit from. Say you are speaking with a head of service or an assistant director. That's the profile of a lot of the candidates that we speak to on a daily basis. What is your advice to them in children's services, obviously, if they have the ambition to want to step up to DCS? Or what would you maybe say to your younger self that you should be aware of before going into the role?
Nice one. Right. What I would say is there's nothing not to love about this role. Genuinely, hand on heart, the level of satisfaction that you get out of everything you do, whether it's working with schools, with communities, with social workers, seeing children, young people, the balcony and the dance floor conversation, you've got it all in one role. So it is really great. Prepare for it, I would say. I have been quite deliberate on my journey to think about the next steps, and I'm saying that because preparedness takes a number of levels. It is Mental Health Week, so first and foremost, I would say look after yourself, your physical, emotional, mental health. You need to. It's a tough job at times, and you need to be well. It could be hard, and if you're not well, it could be even harder. So always look after yourself. I think whatever the job and the role you do, we ought to be looking after ourselves before we look after other people. So I would say that pay attention to your regime and be disciplined about it, and sometimes unapologetic about, breaks and holidays, and, taking good care of yourself. Be the best you can be in everything you do, whatever you are, because that will help you with your confidence, will help you with the technical knowledge that will get you to a point. Pay attention to what's really going on around you and learn from others. I think the greatest learning for me has come from people around me, but also from mentors. Be deliberate about having a mentor, somebody that can inspire you, can guide you, can also challenge you, push you. I also think that if you're not sure, come have a taster of it. Come shadow one of us. There's quite a few of us nationally, and I'm sure in the profession, in the family of DCS, is any colleague, and I include myself into that, will welcome anyone who will want to spend a day or a week in the shoes of a DCS, to see the up and downs and the greatness at the end of a week, of a busy week. Make alliances, make friends. Back to the relationship point, I think you need to look after your network. Again, you learn from experience. There's no point in going into a job and thinking about reinventing the wheel. There's plenty of people that have done it sometimes all before. Circumstances are changing, but nothing beats experience. So I've always gone to colleagues for advice. So build that network that will serve you well in the future. When you move into the DCS role, it's no longer about the technical knowledge. It's about style and approach and leading people that you work with, people you work for, people you serve, the communities. It's a different skill. And what I would say to my younger self around that, it's okay to be vulnerable and to say, actually, that's not my strong point, and believe in the power of distributed leadership and the power of team. Because if you allow that and if you empower others to lead, actually you are multiplying, the influence and the change you want to make for the people you serve. So it's okay to be vulnerable and to say, I don't know it all and I need help and support. I would also say to my younger self, impatience to change. I don't do delayed gratification very, very well. And I am working on that. But being able to recognize that you have to take people on a journey with you. And we all, from thinking about different learning styles and approaches, we are different. There's beauty in that diversity. Acknowledge that, embrace that, and pace yourself sometimes.
It's good to hear the going right back to the start of your answer, that it's a really good job. I'm glad to hear you speak so positively about it, because from our point of view, a lot of the conversations we have, given the challenges that councils are facing nowadays, that last step up from AD to DCS, less people are willing to go up, according to the conversations I have, and a lot of my colleagues are saying a similar thing. So it's really good to hear the positive side of it, for sure. And I guess it's a good segue into the challenges that you are facing. I guess it's a good idea to tackle them head on, so that anyone who is thinking about it, obviously they'll be aware of it anyway, but to get your take on it. So what do you feel are the challenges that you're facing at the minute?
The challenges, in many ways, the challenges are not necessarily unique to the role or the place.
Yeah.
We're in London, global city. Everything that happens worldwide will quickly rebound in London. So leading in London, in many ways, it's perhaps slightly different than leading in a different place. I know colleagues might have different views on what I just said, but I do believe, London as a global city, it's got its own unique challenges.
Yeah.
And of course, all of those will reverberate into the workings of the local government, and children's services is part of the local government. So, the war that happened on the back of a pandemic, and the social economical crisis, the poverty, the cost of living. Let's not talk about housing and the challenges around housing in London, even in places like Wandsworth, when we are working really, really hard to think about more social and affordable housing. Cost of living, it affected the whole society, and in turn, they do have an impact. All of this has an impact on children's services and how we are structured, organized, how we get ourselves ready for the future. I think local government is going to look and feel very differently as a result of what's happening globally. So there are many challenges, and many challenges specific to children's services. I think for this conversation, if we could just maybe focus on one of the biggest challenges, which I'm sure is not specific to children's services from conversations with colleagues, with partners. I want to talk about workforce, because workforce is our biggest single asset, and it's something that we should and we are looking after, and we have to forever think about how can we recruit the best, retain the best, invest in the people, because people are here to then serve the people. Workforce is a challenge in teaching, in health, in housing, in planning, particularly in London, in the London space. It's a challenge. I am proud that we've managed to in children's services have a workforce that is stable. We've retained great people. We've got a number of people that are choosing us and choosing to stay. So I'm really pleased to be in that space. At place level, we are doing a lot of work across the council, and we are in a partnership with Richmond to think about becoming the great employers of people, and that's across the board, and that's fantastic, because particularly in London, where people can generally just hop around and be attracted to the next neighborhood or borough, we have to be the best we can be. So we are thinking about that collectively at a regional level. We're working together as a group of DCSs to look at how best to recruit together, not to compete, for the same candidates, to think about our unique selling points, but attract, the people that we also fit with, with the area, with the practice models that we operate. There's a lot of getting together of the willing, coalition of the willing, to talk about problem solving together, which is what I again love about this job, because there's a genuine cross-sector, working together to help support one another, to think together about the challenges. And recruitment is one of the biggest conversations we are having. We take the conversation at the national level because, the recruitment and retention, not just of social workers, but practitioners across the board in the department, it's an issue nationally. So we talk about that, together and with government to see about how best we can incentivize people, to still do the jobs. This is what we do. It's amazing, but it is intense emotional labor. And you have to go the extra mile to look after the people. And I think gone the days where people are just looking at how much you pay.
Yeah.
social work, teaching, like many other professions, are actually, vocation. People choose these jobs because they want to make a difference. So to incentivize them to stay and to want to belong, to want to make relationships that are long lasting, with communities, to make that difference, it takes something else. And in Wandsworth, we do a lot of that. And I know, well, that's replicated across the sector. So there is something about looking after our own. Yes, it's a challenge, but there's also an opportunity. And I genuinely think on the back of the pandemic, people have reassessed lives and work-life balance and life and death conversation in a very different way. And the patterns of working have changed. The way in which people approach portfolio work, for example, it's very different. We need to embrace that. We can't be left behind. We need to be horizon scanning and actually thinking about how to adapt and change to make sure we are accommodating of new trends that are developing. And this is why we can work with you guys, to think collectively about this. That's one non-negotiable for me, because when you're thinking about people in the place, you have to have a relationship with the place, with the communities you serve. Now, how you go about that relationship, it's a different conversation. But I genuinely think you have to have that connection with the place. When you work in local government, you do have to have that. So, but that's a challenge and an opportunity at the same time.
I want to take it back to competition. You mentioned earlier that you have to incentivize people to come to your borough as opposed to maybe a neighbour or whatever it might be. And this is just my opinion, but I think that maybe local gov as a sector has to be competitive as well. Because, for example, I'm not out of uni too long ago, right? Just over 2 years ago, approximately. And I didn't even hear of pathways into a career into local government. And I don't think that that's something that every industry has. I'm at least aware of, for example, what Google do, even though I don't want to work for them. And yeah, my question was, do you think that there's something that maybe the sector should be looking at when it comes to youth development? Because I remember a conversation with you at the MJ Awards last year about you having a lot of interns and grads, and that surprised me a bit, because looking at it from a recruiter's point of view, that conversation very, very rarely happens. So what's your take on incentivizing younger people into a career in public sector, or more specifically local government?
Mm-hmm. Great question. And one that's actually been preoccupying us in Wandsworth quite a bit. Why is that? Am I surprised in terms of your reflections on your journey and what you knew when you wish you knew, maybe?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised about that. I think I was actually only last night with our youth council talking about opportunities for young people and more opportunities for young people, to get to know the workings of the council. I had one of the biggest employers in Wandsworth, and the myriad of career choices and jobs that actually are on offer are quite impressive.
Yeah.
And
vocations, even like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, young people don't necessarily know about it. So we have been thinking about that, because we've heard from young people they want more of.
Yeah.
Of understanding of the local government family and what that entails. We've also been preoccupied because as a borough, we are a young borough. There's a lot of transient population in Wandsworth, so we need to think about who do we attract, what is our audience. I mean, the very fact that today I've been deliberate about choosing to be at the Falcon Group studio, a place for young people, hopefully goes some way to show that children and young people are at the heart of what we do in the department, but in this council as well. So we're doing a lot at the moment to think about creative ways in which we could attract some interest in the workings of the council, and in a way dispel the myth about the council is not just about bins collections.
Yes.
If you are in, sometimes in need of help, support, or advice, in touch with, social services, whether that's adults or children, there is more to the council that, the usual departments that gets, people talking about the council. There's more we could do across the sector. I mean, personally, I've taken an interest in talking to schools.
I had a thought I can interject with.
Yeah.
I'd say I only learnt that the majority of council spend is actually after social care, not bin collection. That's all it was sort of known for in my family, certainly. I think that's probably a common theme across the country. I think people aren't aware of what councils do. And maybe if they were, it's a lot easier to attract people.
There's so much greatness in the working of the council. And actually for most people, council means the bin collection,
Yes,
the roads, the pavements. In fact, the biggest proportion of the council budget is spent on adults and children. In many ways, 70% in Wandsworth of the council budget is spent on looking after children, young people, their families, and adults, vulnerable adults.
I think that fact alone, marketing that fact alone, would probably go a long way. It's something we're hoping to do with this a little bit, because that needs to be known. Because the reason for having this podcast, which I obviously mentioned to you, is most stories regarding councils are seen in quite a negative light. It's because that sells, isn't it? So whenever a bad story happens that involves council, it maybe perpetuates that that train of thought amongst the public. Whereas if we were to tell people, well, actually, as an organization, most of what we do with our money is to try and make people's lives better directly, social care, adults or children's, I think that immediately would make people rethink about their opinions of, oh, my bins didn't get collected this week, so the council.
I'm with you on that, and I am with you. There is, however, a bit of a stigma attached.
Sure.
If you are known to children or adults department, and that's unfortunate. And again, thinking about how could we, in a different way, deliver services at the heart of the community, to engage with communities at the earliest opportunity without that stigma or label attached, for people to freely knock on your door to say, I need a bit of help.
Yeah.
Actually, my kid doesn't want to go to school, or I need some help with budgeting. We're trying to think and break down those barriers and think about family hubs, think about, services co-located under the same roof that are within, pram pushing distance from, where people live. So they can really come and knock on the door and have their children see a pelled visitor, which is more as if there's a service for all, but also ask for help and support in a way that's not seen as, well, this is a bad thing.
Yeah.
We all need help, at points in time. And, I think we need to do more to change the look and feel of councils, to actually open up the doors and invite communities in. And with that, young people, talking to young people, they don't want to be seen as, going to places that, again, that stigma, that rhetoric, that's like a frozen narrative in the system. We need to break that down. As you're asking me about young people, I'm also thinking, and we've got, I mentioned to you about our ambition to be the greatest employer. And we are genuinely thinking about how to make young people welcomed. yes, we are, we've got a number of graduates, we encourage work experience, we've got apprentices, and there's a greater focus, on that locally. But are we really ready mentally, to work in a different way? Young people are, I think there's a lot of energy that they bring. There's fresh ideas, there's innovation, there's a rhythm. I think we need to be more embracing of that and more welcoming. And so there's a lot of work that I think organizations have to do, with the people that they currently employ in order to welcome something else. And I think we can learn perhaps a bit more from private sector around that, because actually young people are the future of this society. And again, on the theme of let's not be scared about what's around the corner. Let's welcome it. Let's embrace it. Let's grow and groove with the young people, because they are the future, I would say. So yes, we do a lot, and I'm glad you found that conversation interesting and intriguing at the same time when you compare with other conversations. But I genuinely think we could do a lot more to think about, how the local government family can really welcome young people, working with universities in a different way, with the schools, with colleges. I'm trying, I'm wanting to fish in a pond to have those conversations with schools. And actually I've been invited to talk to a group of girls about potential jobs in local government. I use every conversation to hopefully inspire. I sometimes think about my legacy, in the place, but my legacy put full stop. And if a conversation I have with somebody can inspire somebody to join local government, to become a director of children's services, I feel that my aim has been fulfilled. But more broadly speaking, for this place, what I hope for long-lasting change,
Yeah.
for children and young people, and for the next generations to find it easier. Children and young people in the wider sense, or particularly females, in children's services department, the vast majority of our employees are females.
Yeah.
With that complexities, the around vulnerabilities, caring responsibilities, violence against women and girls, it's still a subject that we are all talking, doing something about that, and trying to address.
Yeah.
I am passionate about inspiring more women and girls, to dream big, to aim high, and to make change for themselves and, for the communities where they live in.
I think these kind of conversations could go a long way. People in my circles, they're finding it harder than ever to get the kind of jobs that maybe they thought of getting when they went into university. And yeah, given that local gov has maybe a shortage of people, and as you mentioned, I think conversations like this can definitely help in maybe encouraging a few of them to make the change, or maybe just think about it and explore it.
We need to be more deliberate about this and more bold and brave, and particularly thinking, not making assumptions, acknowledging where privilege exists.
Yes.
Because for certain groups and disadvantaged groups, and I'm thinking children, young people, but all the way through society, we need to be bold about creating those opportunities and opening the doors, and sometimes go find them and bring them in and create that space for everyone to be the best they could be.
Awesome. For my last question, I want to bring it back to maybe recruitment that's more focused on the Tar Hill community. Say, for instance, that you're recruiting someone that would maybe report into you, or maybe one level lower than that, relatively high level of responsibility overall. What is it that you would look for in candidates applying to head of service or AD roles, and yeah, what's your process as well? Could you tell me a bit about how you approach sort of more executive recruitment?
Right. I run the risk of repeating myself, but forgive me for that if I say I genuinely believe that our workforce truly is our biggest asset. I am invested in every conversation, and particularly the levels that you are talking about. I pay attention to how we go about it. Hellos are important. Hellos are as important as goodbyes from an organization. So I think that that journey in it's something that we've all experienced in the various roles we've applied. So how we go about it in Wandsworth, again, children and young people are at the heart of decision making. Families, parents, champions, partners. Most roles will have young people voice as a part of the selection, or parents' voice, or members of the community. Really living and believing that concept that it takes a village to look after a child, and we can look at a candidate in two different lenses, and all those lenses are as important. So I don't make decisions alone, is what I'm saying. We look for authenticity in experiences, in the way in which candidates have delivered on the task they were entrusted to deliver before. For me, conversations are important. I go back to conversation, that relational approach. You read a resume, a pen portrait on a paper. I feel like I need to have a conversation with a candidate. We always offer that. It takes two to tango in a relationship, and especially if it's somebody that I will have to work with. It's a two-way street. You have to grow into that space together, and that first hello starts that conversation. So it's really, really important. So it depends for what level, again, you're applying for. For many roles, yes, technical knowledge is something that you will be looking for, or experience or expertise, depends on what the task is. For more senior role, it's attitude, but that's running through at all levels. And this is where I think that people that are not really the finished article, and we never are the finished article, we learn every day. I pay attention to that because I really believe what we have here in particular and what we're good at is developing people. So whether you are it or aspiring, there's a place for you to join us, and we pay attention to those things. Again, the voices of those with lived experience from Wandsworth, children, young people, families, partners matters. In the process, we have to work together. It's an ecosystem that has to function, and that's important. I always check in with people after they land. I make it my business to meet every single person that joins the department. I invite them to a tea with Anna. Sometimes we haven't got a tea, but there is sweets and fruits and things in my office to check in on how they felt about their journey in, and what happened upon arrival, whether we are looking after them well. I think those conversations are important.
I agree.
So yeah, always do that. Always check in with people. And yeah, it's at all levels. The decision is not made in isolation from those that we are here to serve.
Understood. Anna, thank you very much for your time. That's all the questions I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.